is another edition of Shaping Clay, and we're in the book of Galatians. Studied this together as a church, and we really, really enjoyed this concept because it's something all of us are quite familiar with. It's sowing and reaping. So it's Galatians 6, and we're looking at verses 7 through 10. And so what we looked at this week was the fact that when you plant something, for instance, I brought in a small plant of an avocado plant, and it was pretty nice. You could actually see the avocado seed still in the bottom of the soil, and so I was able to use that as an illustration, and it really worked well. But things grow here. We're in the jungle, so things grow very, very quickly, very, very fast. So sowing and reaping is something we're able to watch on a pretty monumental scale. However, it's still the principles apply, and they're not just the principles that God set into motion in Genesis 1 when it talked about how he had the seed within each of its kinds. So it's able to sow and reap according to its kinds, which is why no matter what evolutionary biologists try to say, dogs will always produce dogs after their kind. Cats will always produce cats after their kind. Every organism God created will produce after their kind. That principle is what we're talking about, but in a spiritual application. It works physically. It works in every category. But this is very, very important as we look at it from a spiritual concept. And that's what we looked at, taking the message of Paul in Galatians chapter 6. So we looked at how the first thing he said was, do not be deceived. And that's a strong statement because it means literally we have this potential to be tricked. And you can see around the world around us how quickly people fall to lies, how they're quickly deceived. So he's about to say something that may cut against the grain of the culture that we're in. Do not be deceived. And then he says this phrase, God is not mocked. Now that really is a picture of us thumbing our nose at God. It's a rather aggressive statement. You know, you can't just ignore a command that God's given and think that he's just going to say, oh, okay, all right, well I'll keep going about what I'm doing. You keep going about what you're doing. No, that doesn't work. God will not be mocked. And then he gives us the principle for whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. And so in the very first verse we've looked at here, we have the first principle of sowing and reaping, and that is whatever you sow, you're going to reap. And so one of the things I showed in my avocado illustration, I had the little plant there. I'll give you a picture of what an avocado plant looks like. Okay, here it is. This is an avocado plant. And if you look, I don't know if you can see it very well, but you can barely see the seed still popping up over the soil there. So that's what an avocado plant looks like, and it's doing amazingly well. I'm quite impressed with its growth and how it's doing. All right, but that didn't happen overnight, and that we'll get to that principle in a minute. But the first one is I planted an avocado seed. Now I love guacamole. I'm living in Mexico, and nothing is as good in Mexico as guacamole. Guacamole is fantastic. I love it. I especially love my wife's specific recipe for it. She puts green tomatoes and red tomatoes. And so one of the things I said in our study was I love guacamole, and everybody agrees. And I love chunky guacamole, but I also like all the things that my wife puts in the guacamole. And so I said, so I planted this guacamole, and I'm going to get this avocado, and I'm going to get some avocado, and I'm going to get some tomatoes, green ones and red ones. And of course, one of the kids in the was, no, that's not going to happen, because you have to plant tomato seeds to get tomatoes. And even a child understands this first aspect, this first characteristic of the principle of the harvest, and that is you're going to reap only what you sow. And then the next verse he says, so if we sow to the flesh, to our flesh, the appeasement of our flesh, the pleasing of our flesh, our selfish nature. If we sow to that flesh, we'll reap corruption. Of the flesh, we'll reap corruption. Every time our flesh is corrupt, our desires are corrupted. So when we sow in those kinds of corrupted conditions, what's going to happen is we're going to reap. What's going to be the planting is going to what's going to throw the seeds out is going to be corruption. And then he says, uh, but he who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life. So this is a beautiful picture of how when God allows us to work through the Spirit that He's given to all of us as His children. We have the Spirit abiding within. So when we trust in that Spirit and we allow that Spirit to sow those seeds of the fruit of the Spirit, when we do that and using the gifts of the Spirit that is within, when we do that, what we're also doing is we're throwing those seeds out. The difference is one reaps corruption, the other everlasting life. And here's the thing. It's a choice. It's a choice on our side. We get to choose. Do we sow corruption? Do we sow everlasting life? And so this is that first picture. And you're only gonna reap whatever it is that you've sown. So we looked at that. The first part is you reap what you sow. The second thing is you reap later than you sow. And you kind of see that when he gave us this verse in verse 9. He says, and don't grow weary while doing good, for we will reap if we do not lose heart. It's going to take time. And that's one of the problems with me. I like microwave spirituality. I like microwave. I don't like crock pot spirituality. I just really don't. I like it to be, I don't like a slow cooker. I like it to be immediate. I like it right now. But it doesn't work. It doesn't work in the spiritual world. And it doesn't work in the real world. I sowed that seed, and it's months old now, and you can see how big it is. But that's only months, several months. And it's incremental. There's no fruit on that thing. There won't be fruit on that thing till I don't know when. I've never done this before, so we don't know. But there's going to be eventually fruit on it, and the fruit will be avocados. But it's going to take a while because you reap later. You reap later than you sow. But so that's the second thing. You reap what you sow, you reap later than you sow. And the third thing is you reap more. And this is the most beautiful thing. I planted one avocado seed. I'm not going to get one avocado. I'm going to get multiple avocados, and I'm going to get them for a long time, many years. Depending on where I put this tree, I could get them for literally as long as my grandchildren live. This is the picture of that everlasting life, that Spirit harvesting, that the principle of the harvest, using the concept of the Spirit that lives within, that gives us the power to rise above the temptations and the tendencies and the condition of our flesh. So the first thing is you're going to reap what you sow. The second thing, you're going to reap later than you sow. And here's just a phrase: don't give up. Keep watering. Keep keep getting fertilizer. Keep keeping the weeds back. Let time bring the harvest. I know some of you are doing some incredible things, maybe in your family or in your community, and you're just not seeing any results right away. That's okay. That's part of this principle. So don't lose heart. Don't give up. Keep on keeping on. All right. And then the third thing is you reap more. The danger is we're going to reap more in the corruption area also. We'll reap not only more, and it's this principle that also comes in play here, is that when we do sin, we can choose, just like I said, we can choose to either sow to the flesh or sow to the Spirit. We can choose that. But we can't choose the consequences of when we reap to the flesh. We don't know how much of that is going to come back, but it does come back. And so that's the principle. That's what we looked at Sunday. We had a good time with it, a lot of involvement. But this is a principle that every one of us need to be reminded of. It's right in front of us, literally. I mean, look behind me. This is sowing and reaping right here. I mean, just going on literally every single day where I am. And we see it. We see it in action. So you reap what you sow, you reap later than you sow, and you reap more than you sow. All right. I hope you have a fantastic day. God bless you.